Okay, remember I said that realistic drawing is just creating the illusion of 3D on 2D paper, and one of the main ways we control the perceived shape of an 3D object or environment is tone value and gradient. For the curious, the other main methods to control perceived z-axis, which you don't need to worry about for this course, is context and perspective. A road like this, the viewer will perceive the smaller end as further away, obviously. When you really delve into perspective, there is using vanishing points to build geometric grids and shapes that you then refine, but we don't need to worry about that in this course. We are not doing 3D character or 3D environment design. That is a totally different beast, and this is a course for beginners and casual fine artists. So, back to tone value. We're concerned with the 3D effect we can control with tone value through the context of light, which just means the viewer's brain assumes there is a consistent light source or more in the drawing. And we get to control how far or close any part of a surface is by how we shade it, like the nose on a face that's coming out. So pretty much always, no matter what you draw, we have this crazy complex map of gradient going on that we are trying to duplicate. And you can think of a single gradient as just one tone changing toward another tone, and that tone will inevitably move towards another value in all directions, different gradients. But we're just going to talk about one segment of change, one gradient, when one value changes to another value, because if you understand and can draw that, you can draw everything, since everything's based on, the small pieces. Some of you may think, well, that's not hard. We're dealing with observational drawing. Aren't we just drawing what we see, real life or image? So what value or gradient we need to put down is right there. And that's correct. What I'm teaching you now is a simple concept that once understood will make that process easier and more accurate. 3 nose bridges, all going from the same dark value to the same mid value to the same light value. From the same point A to point B, but they give you 3 totally different 3D forms. Why? The reason is obvious for most, but you probably find it hard to put it into precise words immediately, right? You probably will say something vaguely like, oh, the gradient is different, but how? Exactly what's going on, and how can this help us? Well, what you are thinking of is what I like to call transition distance. I have no idea if this is an official term, but I'm gonna make it my official term. These 3 joints, while sharing a lot of similarities, have 3 totally different value transition distances. If you are looking at it fully by this 2-dimensional surface, the transition zone is actually different. But for simplicity's sake, let's keep it one-dimensional, one direction of change. Even though on actual drawings, value changes to another value all over the place, but the concept is always the same. Okay, it boils down to this. The value transition distance is just the distance from where value A start to actually change into value B. The key is where value A actually start to change at that point. Not to the left, not to the right, and the end point is where it reached value B, not any further. The distance between them is the value transition distance. Since I'm going to refer to this a lot, for this class I'm just going to call it TD, transition distance. So as you can see, first picture, there are 2 TDs and they are very short. For the middle one, it is longer, and for the last one, it is the longest. So you perceive it as a very round cylinder. I think these images are self-explanatory in their effect. So even though you see different values on the reference, you should pay attention to exactly where one value starts to change and how long the distance it takes to fully transition to the other value or touch another area of extremely similar value. Of course, we can all see extremely short TD or just flat out zero distance when value immediately changes to another value make you perceive the form as being narrow and very sharp. If this happens not on one form but between 2 totally different elements, like a subject and the background, often the TD is 0. Like my face right now, like there is, it immediately changes to the background. There is no gradient that goes from my face to the background because the image is sharp. If you have a TD that is long and is between subject and the background, it then gives the effect that the edge is blurry or very misty and foggy. This is very important for tension and edge control. Those of you who are photographers understand this very well. If you adjust focal point onto the subject correctly, background becomes blurry, foreground becomes blurry. TD between subject and background, if it's sharp, is 0, since the subject is in sharp focus and any other distance to the camera is not. You can create cinematic effect drawings with this idea. the same way you can do it with a camera. There are some examples that I've used in my art channel. As always, to drive the point home, example from evaluation and references. The cube, TD between surfaces is basically 0, hence you see the edge making a very sharp turn, while the sphere has very long distance for transition between any two values, giving you the sense it is a round object. And for any 2 points very close together, their value becomes very similar, and they are now essentially just part of still a very long transition distance. And for the portrait, it's just a lot of complex transitions all over the place. So on a single form, low to 0 TD, the effect is going to be narrow and sharp. Long TD, it's going to feel like it's more round or more flat. Tone between different elements, most often something and the background, generally TD is going to be 0. If not, it's going to be foggy and blurry. There are rare exceptions, such as a harsh light or hard light creating what is called a terminal effect on a sphere, but those are rare. And you'll understand common sense of interaction of light and object under different conditions. I think you don't have to spell anything out, it just makes sense to you when you look at it. So just draw what you see for those rare imageries. Now, I have a friend who used to always draw the nose like this until he realized, and I pointed out a little bit, the TD are too short. Then he fixed that habit and now his drawing is looking much more accurate and, if I do say so, better. Okay, any part unclear? Questions? Post it in communities. Me and others who are more experienced, I'm sure would love to help you. When there are more people joining this community later on, I won't have the time to reply to everyone, so I'm counting on you guys to give feedback to each other. That's the whole point of a community, right? We help each other. And you don't necessarily have to remember everything in a lesson like this. A lot of you intuitively understand these concepts already. But for example, if your drawing is off, something is too sharp or too round, and the lighting is weird and you can't fix it, you can come back and rewatch this and post your drawing and ask, how do I fix this? And often we lose objectivity when we look at our own drawing for too long. There could be an error right in your face, but you no longer notice it. So it's especially important as a beginner to post your drawings for feedback. I have to walk away from my drawing often and come back for that fresh perspective. Right now this community is at a very early stage, so there are not a lot of members. But when there are more members later on, I hope, you're gonna get immediate feedback and help and compliments for certain. And this platform knows your activity. So if you are very active in some way, like help a lot of people, answering and asking questions, posting your drawings, your engagement points will go up. It's not a big deal, but that's what this leaderboard thing is. I can come up with gift ideas later on for those who are very active in learning and helping and being engaging. It's a win-win. And when there are more members, I can do things like weekly live stream Q&A, which I think would be helpful. And now you understand the concept in this lesson, you can fix your drawing or even play around and change the reference to suit your own style, or use the reference to help you draw completely different objects or face. You do need good proportion methods to help you. That's next module. But don't go to the next module right now. Finish the next video for tone value. It is probably the most important and the most helpful. Cheers!